Hello. I didn't want to take too much of your time. As a fan of JRR Tolkien, I wanted to throw my 2 cents into the ring concerning Amazon's upcoming series, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Amazon's highly anticipated prequel to The Lord of the Rings has already generated a lot of controversy and backlash from hardcore Lord of the Rings fans. This isn't helped by the showrunner's clear disregard for the source material written by Tolkien himself, or even how they constantly... Apologies, I need a minute. Or even how they constantly broadstroke all critics and detractors as racist. And they really need to shut up. Because from the point of view of this black man, the real racists are the showrunners themselves. Instead of respecting and working with Tolkien's extensive written material, they're throwing it out the window and making up their own story and characters, all of which is clearly inspired by modern ideas, beliefs, politics, and sensibilities. They've even turned the wise Elrond into a, I quote, ambitious politician. Meanwhile, Galadriel has become a bland, hot-headed action girl stuck on revenge against somebody. Yes, this is really happening. And yes, they are proud of this. Contrary to my tone now, when this series was announced last year, I was excited. I figured things would be different from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies. I wanted to see a new age of Middle-earth, only described in Tolkien's appendices, unfinished tales, and the Silmarillion. I wanted to see the forging of the Great Rings, the rise of Sauron, the wars of the Second Age, the glory, the fall, and the destruction of Numenor. The war of the Last Alliance, Gil-galad and Elendil fighting side by side against Sauron. Badass elves and Numenorians, the last remnants of the faithful of Numenor in Arnor and Gondor, fighting against hordes of orcs. I wanted to see what Middle-earth was like in between those years between Sauron's rise when he first made the Ring of Power and when Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's hand. I was hyped for this stuff. I live for this stuff. Now, I'll probably pass on this show. The writers and showrunners clearly care more about pushing politics instead of telling a good story or respecting the legacy of a beloved fantasy writer. So, they're not getting a dime from me, nor a second of my attention when the show comes out. And you know what? I understand that when you adapt a written story into a visual medium, I understand that there are going to be changes. I understand that not everything is going to be the same. And I can go with this as long as it makes for a good story. I can go with this if the change makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense, or the change is just bad or poorly implemented, it's fair game to be hated and criticized. Why are they making up black elves, black dwarves, or even black hobbits? Hell, hobbits didn't even show up in the main story until the Third Age anyway. And shouldn't that black dwarven princess have a beard? If I recall correctly, it's supposed to be so hard to tell the difference between dwarf men and dwarf women that dwarf women are often mistaken for dwarf men. So, where's her beard? I am not saying you can't have diversity or color in fantasy. Let me be clear on that. I'm actually in favor of seeing more non-token people of color in fantasy. Not just strong, admirable individuals, but entire cultures and kingdoms of a diverse background, inspired by ancient African kingdoms like Egypt or Ethiopia, South America or North American ancient civilizations, Middle Eastern civilizations like Assyria, Persia, Babylon, or even the Greco-Persian kingdom states that came up after Alexander's death. Major storylines following these characters with their own struggles, their hopes, failures, successes, and triumphs. I want more non-white major characters in my fantasy stories. But not like this. You know what I want? I want a storyline centered around the Haradrim, the peoples of the South heavily influenced by African cultures. They live just south of where Gondor will be in the Third Age, and they're divided in various kingdoms and tribes. And they've had it pretty hard throughout the Second Age. I want to see a storyline about the Haradrim. I want to see a storyline about a tribe of Haradrim getting into battle with other Haradrim and orcs who are allied with Sauron. And then, around the time when the Númenóreans start to go evil and corrupt, they start getting attacked, oppressed, colonized, and enslaved by the Númenóreans. In this situation of a rock and a hard place, there comes a Haradrim champion who's trying to rally what remains of his people's warriors to fight a losing battle despite his efforts. And then in comes Sauron, disguised as a kindly traveler who happens to have a ring of power. One of 9 rings of power, if you know where this is going. He tells the champion, you know, I was going to give this to someone else, but you killed him and you clearly needed more, so here, use this ring to protect your people. The champion is a little weary, but, you know, with as desperate as his people are, he takes it without question, and initially, he uses the power granted to him by this magic ring to protect and save his people. But as time goes on, the ring of power corrupts him. It enslaves his mind. He keeps wearing it always. He becomes more paranoid. He starts looking at those he thought he could trust with fear of treachery and betrayal. He starts killing random people just because he can. And slowly, this champion who you wanted to use the ring of power for good becomes a servant of evil, until eventually he becomes a slave of Sauron's will. He becomes one of the Nazgul. And ironically, this warrior who took on a ring of power to protect his people from slavery and death from the Númenóreans has now become a servant of Sauron, helping Sauron to destroy and enslave his people instead. Look me in the eye and tell me that's not Emmy-worthy bait. As a so-called black man myself, I don't want to be appeased with half-assed token black characters. Or worse, hyper-token characters who get hyped up as important, but are really just there for a diversity quota. It's all a marketing manipulation tactic to trick people into thinking that your diversity aims are for black people and other non-white people. But you're just using your token characters to generate money from people who fall for your lies. Then, Amazon wants to claim to be the victim despite deliberately stoking controversy and divisiveness. This is disrespectful for the people of color you claim to be helping. It's disrespectful to Tolkien fans, and it's disrespectful to Tolkien himself. The utter disrespect and mishandling shown here is exactly why the late Christopher Tolkien was so protective of his father's work. Because he wanted to stop the vultures from taking his father's work and exploiting it into something that would have no resemblance to his father's life's work. I will make one more point, and then I'm done. One of Tolkien's major themes in his works was the idea of people from different backgrounds, different races, different cultures and races that have conflicts between each other, all choosing to put those things aside, to work together, both to preserve and protect and better this world, and to stand side by side against evil. That at the end of the day, all of us are equal in our potential for good and evil, that we can all look out and see that there is good in this world, that there is something in this world to love, to cherish, to nurture, all of this stuff, that this world is good. This world is inherently good, and it's worth fighting for. And the best chance to successfully fight for the good in this world is to do so together. I guess Amazon missed the memo on that very vital theme, because they are doing the exact opposite, and when being called out on it, they double down and do it even more. Because in their eyes, bad press is the same as good press. So excuse me if I'm not going to put up with this nonsense. Excuse me if I'm going to take my time and go elsewhere. to those who are going to watch the show, you guys have fun with it. I hope you find something that you enjoy in it. But as for me, it just doesn't seem worth it. Anyway, that's all I had for today. Farewell, friends.